And eventually, what I call finale, for lack of a better word. This is not a manual breakdown.
So we'll go through that. Okay, so where's the sweeping?
And here you'll see that you have these 5 armies here. The idea is to pivot on nets, get in behind the Allied armies, and then the war. Basic idea. And of course, you all know that it didn't work out. I'm not going to get into that kind of thing. But what I'm really trying to bring out here is nothing more than a huge what? Single endowment. In other words, you can think of it as a gigantic loop. Blatant operation. In other words, you're trying to swing in the back door, grab the guys, cut them off from the supply support, force a surrender, and into war. That was the basic idea behind it. We well know there's all kind of reasons why it didn't work out. I don't want to get there right now, but that's what happened. Okay, now, that in mind, let's look at the action-reaction flows out to stagnation. What happened? I want to talk about what's happening. First of all, these offenses tend to be conducted on wide frontage. So they emphasize few rather than many independent thrusts. In other words, each thrust was geared to the other. They wanted to do it carefully synchronized. Remember that word I used to talk about the other night? Carefully synchronized those thrusts. You go back and look at it. Christ, it was a goddamn, they were trying to choreograph the Schlieffen maneuver. Well, what happens when you do that, if somebody gets slowed up, then the other ones get slowed. You go the pace of the slowest unit. We talked about it. So even as advance, maintain and protect flanks, provide artillery support, and advance and makes headway. Well, 2 things. You become predictable for 2 reasons. 1, it's all working the same way. And 2, when somebody gets slowed up, you operate slower, so it also makes it predictable. It was done all the time. Everybody's worrying about choreographing the goddamn operation. Okay, and then what happens? When they run into difficulty, then they throw the reserves in at the point where the difficulty is. So the other guy throws his reserves in. What do you got now? Bloodbath. You got a bloodbath, strength against strength. And you just keep piling up strength against strength. You got a bloodbath. That's exactly what happened. And you go back and look, Battle of Verdun, you look at the Passchendaele and all various battles, someone will talk about it. You see it done over and over again. So eventually, though, the reaction sets into this kind of where you're trying to do these maneuvers. The defense organized in belts of fortified terrain. Success is done. So-called trench warfare. 2 key ingredients, artillery and machine guns. To arrest and pin down the attacker. And then eventually the counterattack to throw the bastards out after they're all exhausted. It's going back and forth. And of course the result's not too surprising. Well, what would that be evidence of? In terms of OODA loop. What does that really tell you if you want to use the OODA loop as a measure of merit? What's that telling you? You don't have much initiative, do you? It means you're not getting inside your adversary's loop. He's not getting inside yours. It's just sort of a stalemate, going back and forth. You're just going one other way at high rate. It's like an equilibrium condition. Stagnation equilibrium. Just little gains going each way. And the result is large body count with no appreciable gain. Because here's what they're doing. They're going along areas in which they're expected. And the way they're setting it up. Okay? Well, let me talk to a good example. I want to make a really example. I don't want to go too fast. Now, let me give you some examples. The Battle of Somme. They figured, okay, we're going to break through. So they had a 1-week artillery preparation in the Somme sector. Pumped in something like 2 million rounds of artillery over a 1-week period. Just bang, bang. Well, you know, the other side after a while is going to get wise. Hey, there's something going on here. We're coming pretty soon, guys. So that's a notion of predictability. And it's not only that, they'd prepared for previous artillery, because instead of keeping guys just in the trench line, just dispersed them on the field, plus they put them in bunkers, plus they started moving divisions in reserve. So then on the final day, the rolling barrage, infantry goes in these nice deep stand-up formations. And the British on the first day, then after 7-day operation, first day the infantry goes in, 60,000 casualties. In one day, 60,000! That's it. In one day. Okay? So what happened? The Battle of Passchendaele, 1970, 1980, this year. What did they do? Pumped in 4 million. They said, we'll double it. They said, well, all we got to do is we've got to double the effort. Didn't change the message. They doubled the effort. So they pounded an area. I think they went 10 days or something. It was 2 weeks. Back in again. Once again, huge casualties. infiltration. So think about that. For long artillery preparation, what are you doing? Isn't that a notion of predictability? So the guys are ready for it, right? So you're doing. And then the way you make the attack, isn't that another aspect of predictability? So what you want to be is you want to be unpredictable. And all the stuff they were doing is very quite critical. Plus the fact, another notion of predictability, if you're going to be able to make an assault upon the front, they're going to know when ahead of time. Because in order to dump in those huge artillery, amounts of artillery you're going to pump into those rounds, you've got to build up your artillery stockages. And you're not going to put them 500 miles away. You've got to put them near the front where you're going to use them. And all that activity is going on. Enemy reconnaissance and intelligence activity is going to build it up and say, hey, they're getting ready for a big operation here. So you want to think about that. So, okay, what happened? Eventually some people started thinking about that. In fact, early on, the so-called birth which led to our modern tactics today, infiltration tactics. There was initially a French captain by the name of Andre Lafargue, who in 1915 said, hey, this is a hopeless way of doing business. And so he envisaged small units leaking through the enemy line. He didn't have it all right. The Germans captured some of those pamphlets, and then they augmented it even more. And eventually, of course, it was used against the West in 1980, the sort of so-called German infiltration techniques. And not only that, so today they're known, some people call him the Guerrilla tactics. I put a question mark after him because he was not an architect. He just happened to be a commander on the German side that used some, either a French or English correspondent used that name, and ever since then it's called the Guerrilla tactics. He wasn't an architect, so I got the question. But he was a commander on the side. And the guy at the higher level understood the importance of Ludendorff. When he saw what they had, he said, okay, let's really train and do this technique. So from a supreme commander, high-level commander, he didn't understand the appreciation, so he did appreciate the significance of it, so he has to get credit. That kind of thing. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And in the guerrilla thing, seen through Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia. And you probably saw, some of you people saw that movie, Lawrence of Arabia. And he saw a way of getting at through the guerrilla tactics. But also there's another gentleman by the name of Lechau Warbeck down in Germany, East Africa. Anybody read about this exploits down in Germany, East Africa? In many ways, he was even a better guerrilla fighter than Lawrence, because he was totally cut off, literally living on British supplies, and causing them enormous problems. And as a matter of fact, he surrendered after Germany did during World War I. In fact, he wasn't going to surrender because he didn't believe him. The British told him the Germany surrendered. He said, no, you're trying to just get me to give up my force. And it took a lot of convincing. He was stronger at the end than he was in the beginning. Not only that, knew what he did. He early on against the British and their troops down here. He won an early battle. Note the word battle. He said, boy, another one of these victories, I won't have any force left. He said, I can't afford these kind of victories. So he got away and started playing this subversion, guerrilla warfare game, very small unit actions. And he said, if I lose my force, I'm out of business. He was greatly outnumbered.
Where did you say he was operating?
Germany, East Africa. And he surrendered. Beautiful things. He surrendered after Germany during World War I. He was stronger at the end than he was at the beginning. And he was living off British supplies. Classic guerrilla tactics. In other words, living off the other guy's logistics effort, so to speak. Caused an enormous problem. And he was only a colonel. And he's going up against like 20 or 30 British generals. He made them all look like fools. They always come up with a new plan they're going to eradicate Lechau Warbeck, and they all went down the drain. Okay, now let's look at some of these. First, the guerrilla. Infiltration. What do you see here? Something very different since the 19th century. No, rather than trying to use artillery to destroy a person, what are you doing? You're trying to disrupt his defense. And on the end, you have a short artillery draw. And if you think about it, the artillery now is being used as well. It's an essential thing with the Sun Tzu's term. It's a chain for the following effort, which is the Qi. You can think of it as a Chen-Qi operation, which we discussed last night. And then the following, these small teams here in larger groups. In every case, look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to use the Sun Tzu metaphor. Remember what I said last night? Behave like water. Flows through the gaps, it crevices the voids, etc. In other words, strength against weakness. Trying to flow through. And note that they didn't try to keep their formations nicely lined up. Each one trying to make his own pace through. not worrying about how fast or how slow the guy on the right or left of them are going. Work their way through. And then the other teams coming in behind them, larger teams, isolating the local centers of resistance and mopping them up from the flank and the rear. And then larger units pouring through. These gaps get larger and larger until you got what Liddell Hart calls a torrent pouring through the front. So it's great depth. And of course, then the idea is very simple. Hurl strength is one great by an eruption of many thrusts. Note the word, not just a thrust, what? Wiggling in through there. Multiple, many. Because see, if everybody goes through up on line, I don't know, I never figured out if everybody goes up on line, how do you get the other guy's flank? You can't get it a flank. In a sense, you've got to present a flank in order to get it a flank. You say, well, then we're in as bad a position he is. Not necessarily. The question is, who's got the exposed flank? That's the issue. Who's got the exposed? And so if you can operate at a tempo or pace that he can't keep up with, he can't understand what's going on, he's disoriented and you're not, he's got the exposed flank. You pull his pants down, he doesn't pull yours down. You scarf up the prisoners, he doesn't.
So an
In
exposed
a
flank.
sense, it's like the Sun Tzu metaphor. Don't worry, in fact, Patton, I mentioned last night, he said that. Some guy worried, he says, don't say any crap about your flanks. Let the other guy worry about his flanks. I know you got a flank. Make him worry about his. Let him have the exposed flank. That's Patton himself. He understood it. Another one, he said, don't give me crap about holding your position. You've heard that one. He's a little bit more articulate. I think his language is a little bit more rough than what I use here. But the point is, that's the essence of his message.
I don't understand what an exposed flank is then. Are you just saying that is
Well,
a force that doesn't...
Look at if I go through with multiple thrusts going through somebody, right? He's going to be in these little areas here, right? Let's say these are my thrusts, right? I've got a flank here, flank here, flank here, flank here, don't I?
I understand that.
But he's got flanks. The question, who's got the exposed flank? And if you're operating so fast, he doesn't understand what you're doing. In a sense, he's exposed because he's in static here and you can start pulling him apart. He's not prepared for all these things being this way. It all of a sudden happened all of a sudden on him. You're prepared because you're in the operation doing it. In fact, as I'll show you later on, we get into Blitzkrieg tactics, they talk about the roll-out maneuver. You know, you have the thrust and the roll-out, or what the Germans call the off-roll. So you got thrust going in all these directions, so you're cutting them up.
So I got a distractor going around my brain housing group. If Haig had the same observation and orientation of his frontline commanders, he would have seen that his movement was fruitless. Valid? That's what I'm led to believe.
You're talking about, who are you talking about? Hey, oh,
Yeah, the Somme, yes sir.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about the Somme.
Well, remember, he was sitting back in the chateau there.
Yes sir.
Getting some radio reports. He didn't go up and interact with the troops to get the feel of what they could do, so he was divorced from what was going on. All he had was whatever he got in on these little pins he was sticking in the maps and these radio reports he was getting. So he had he didn't really have a good impression of what was going on. It was a false orientation. I guess that's your comment. He had an orientation, but his orientation was the orientation you get in a rear headquarters, period. It's a rear headquarters orientation. Unfortunately, it doesn't map too well on what was going on up there. In fact, I think he was the one that said after the Battle of Passchendaele, he said, if I'd only known what had happened, I would never have sent the troops into this goddamn operation. Which means he already admitted he had a faulty orientation. And that's why the commander's got to get up there in order to talk to their people. In other words, get the feel of the way they think, also the situation they're facing. So you don't take them into situations that are, catastrophic, disasters, blunders, whatever you want to do. You like to minimize. You're still going to make mistakes, but you'll minimize them. And we'll get into that later on. I don't want to bring up too much right now. You're on a good point. Okay, but note what I say here. You got nice vivid images, infiltration technique, but unfortunately it doesn't really address how and why the infiltration schemes work. It doesn't really come to it, sort of a metaphorical thing. So let's get into that. Let's pin this down a little bit more. Knowing that, we start pinning these things down. What do we see here? One, fire it all out. artillery, mortars, machine guns, from army level, division level, various heavy artillery. What you do is you grab the guy's attention and pin him down. All that stuff going on, and he's not going to stand up there in artillery drawing. And all that debris. So in other words, you're clouding his what? His ability to observe what's going on. Okay, then in behind them, I mean, not only at the fire, the gas and smoke, you know, what you do is you're cloaking the follow-on movement, the infiltrators move. Now the infiltrators, instead of coming through these nice line abreast formations, they're squiggling their way forward, dispersed in your regular character. They're actually little swarms, little tiny swarms working their way forward. Okay, they permit them to blend against the terrain, so they're also very hard to pick out. Plus all the other crap going on, the smoke, the gas, the fog, as they came out of the fog. That helps out. So if you take all that together, what you do, the defenders, instance, they've never experienced this before. They got a view they've never seen before, and they just don't know what the hell's going on. Scared view. And you sit here. So the result's pretty simple. And in fact, I read some of the reports. Some of these Australians who were captured. They said that next thing they know, they couldn't figure out what happened. All of a sudden, they're being marched off as prisoners. Game's over. Being marched off as prisoners. The game's over. Totally confused. Totally honest. Never seen anything like this. You know what the key was? They were disoriented. Okay? So then, in a sense, we can say here's the essence. Cloud and stored signature. In other words, you want to give that guy as little signature on you as you possibly can have. So he doesn't know what the hell you're doing. Indistinct, irregular. Yet at the same time, you want to operate in such a way you have a focused effort going through there. It doesn't appear like it's focused, but it's focused. Where you can penetrate, shatter, and mop up this disconnected or isolated debris, which is his system. Like you said last week, that's another way of defeating the detail. That's a good way. Now, okay, the intent then, exploit, you're actually using not tactical concentration, you're using tactical dispersion. Because they were using the tactical concentration way, they were blowing their people away. Now they're using tactical dispersion. But they're doing it in a focused way so they gain tactical success and expand into grand tactical success. Now let's go back to Napoleon. What was he doing? He was trying to use strategic success to gain grand tactical and tactical. These guys do it the other way, using tactical to gain grand tactical and hopefully strategic, which they didn't get. Inverted the whole process. Also, remember what Napoleon had. He had a strategic dispersion followed by a tactical concentration. Here we have a tactical dispersion followed by with a strategic focus. That's also inverted. Well, why were these things inverted? They're doing it just the opposite from the Napoleonic methods. But why were they opposite? Anybody. They had to. They tried it the other way, they're getting blown away. This is the way they had to adapt to the lethal aspects of modern firepower. It's the way they could survive and live and achieve. So they're forced to. So they'd invert both techniques. And the implication is quite simple. They're exploiting tactical dispersion, but in a focused way, rather than marked by principal concentration. So they work their way through. They pump the other guy's friction, paralyze everything, bring about his collapse. So they're turning around. It's just the opposite. You ever see those World War I pictures? Those guys coming out of those trenches all going together forward? I mean, they have actual combat film. That's not just, MGM or something. They actually have the combat film. Like, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't want to be in that outfit. That's an unattractive way to do things. Okay? So it raises a rather interesting question. Remember what I said? Remember, instead of using strategic dispersion followed by tactical concentration, use a tactical dispersion followed with a strategic focus. I tend not to use the word concentration. It has a lot of excess baggage. You can call it concentration, strategic concentration. Okay? So what do you have? And instead of trying to use strategic success for your grand tactical and tactical, using tactical for your grand tactical and strategic. That's also inverted. So you say, are these a rejection of Napoleonic methods? You may think so. But obviously, because the statement I have after the double dash, maybe they aren't. So let's address that. And so in a sense, what they've done, they've taken the infiltration current movement schemes. You can look at Napoleon's multi-thrust strategic penetration maneuvers being down called multi-thrust tactical penetration maneuvers. In other words, they're fine-graining those penetration maneuvers and doing it all the way down to the tactical level. rather than just a strategic level. All the way down to the squad. So my point then is until the rise of infiltration tactics, of course, used as tanks by the Allies, neither the 19th century nor the early 20th century commanders were able to evolve effective tactical penetration maneuvers to offset the increase in weapons lethality. Until these things start showing up. And you have to ask yourself why. And here's some reasons. The aristocratic tradition, that top-down mentality, top-down command and control system, the slavish addiction, the principle of concentration, and the drill regulation mindset. They're going to do all these things in a choreographed way. All taken together. What it does, it reveals an obsession for control by high-level superiors over low-level subordinates. You got to do what they want. And what it really does, it restricts imagination, initiative, and adaptability in order to confront a different situation than they'd had before. Now, if you go back, remember I said yesterday that 19th century, why were the 19th century and early 20th century commanders unable to cope with this, develop tactical schemes in order to cope with the increase of weapons, this new weapons technology? Here's the reason why. It's this kind of a mindset. That's what. And I'm trying to tell you something. The more you try to control your people, the less control you're going to have. Explicit sense. You can't make people autonomous. You get control by getting them to understand that they got a piece of the action, they're important in the operation, and in that sense, rather than talking about discipline, the thing you want to inculcate people is what I call self-discipline. That's the only discipline that counts. And that's what you have to do as a commander or a leader. And when you can inculcate self-discipline in your unit and get them to do things, to take those initiatives, you then have control. But if you don't do it that way, you really don't have it. And that's what I'm trying to talk about. Okay? Now, let's move on. So, but in a sense, it still failed. Remember, they had success lower level, but it failed with the upper level. So why did that happen? Well, here's some good reasons for you in advance. One, even though he started out successful, once it started, when he come up against resistance, he starts fighting against that resistance. In other words, he reverted back to type, strength against strength. In other words, started supporting. Also, exhaustion of the combat team, being the assault. He didn't replace the team, same team. Later on, like in World War II, the Germans had reserves, and they would insert the reserves and have a rotation policy for the leading edge units and the other units so they could keep the operation going. And logistics, they hadn't set up the logistics really in order to handle this kind of stuff. And here's a very key one, communications they set up. Remember, if you're going to use this kind of a technique, once it starts, the rear level commander now really needs that information flow coming from the front, who's succeeding and who isn't. Because depending upon who's succeeding and who isn't, that's how he's going to allocate the follow-on efforts. So he can go through those gaps. If he doesn't know who's succeeding and who isn't succeeding, he doesn't know how to allocate the people. So he's got to make some kind of an allocation, but it's going to have to be a very bright one. And see, that's one thing you have when you go strength against weakness. You have to know where the weakness is, who's succeeding and who isn't. And once they understand that, then they can reallocate or shift the sphere focus we talk about nowadays, or the focus of effort. Go ahead.
When you talk about the immobility of communications,
World War I. They had telephone lines. They didn't have the radios we have now. I know, of course, they had to string telephone lines. Of course, artillery would be in and cut the telephone lines. It was hard to string it. Remember, they didn't have much radio then. They had a lot of telephones.
I was going to say the immobility of not being able to move phone lines versus...
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, it's the best they had at the time. And now, relative to what they needed, it caused some problems. Right? They're trying to run out the wire all the way up all the time.
And yet it was a vast improvement over communication.
Exactly. And of course, nowadays, we have, our communications are fantastic. Of course, some ways they cause a lot of problems because we depend too much on it. As I'll point out, when we get to World War II, Guderian understood that. We depend upon it too much, it causes some problems. He understood it because we had a lot of radios during World War II. Okay? So in that sense, when you think of it this way, in a sense, it sort of softens some of the harshness. And of course, the idea of the elastic zone defense, instead of this rigid defense, you have a flexible or a fluid defense. In other words, you pull back to the onslaught, let your people come back, and then you draw the other guys out from beyond their own artillery, you dump yours in, and then start choking them off from the flanks and the rear. But you have to have confidence in that. People normally say, oh, we're just going to stand fast, we'll blow people away. Sometimes you want to pull back. Anybody ever read Manstein's Lost Victories? Remember how he'd say, take that long step backward, get the plane, and cut the balls off. In other words, he's using the terrain as a medium for maneuver.
There are no lines.
That's right, there are no lines. That's right. The FIBAs, the line, that's all. The only time you have a FIBA is before operations start. After that, nobody knows where it is. So you're trying to put these FIBAs in the map after they start. It's a, you know, it's a hopeless effort. It doesn't represent anything what's going on. If you have a chance, you people got to read his Lost Victory. It's very good. Well, he takes that long step backward, gets the guy strung out, and then cuts his balls off. He gets a whole bag full of prisoners. Christ, their morale's shot to hell and everything else. He's not the only one. He describes it very well. Other ones did it too. You see, they say, we're not going to give up an inch of ground. You put your guys in your place. It's a pounding match. So when you think of it this way, what are you thinking about? The terrain, rather than being trying to hold the terrain, per se, you're using the terrain as a medium of maneuver so you can take out the force. Remember what I said? Terrain doesn't fight wars, machines don't fight wars, people do when they use their minds. In that context, you're using the terrain as a medium through which you're going to maneuver in order to gain leverage on his force. I don't care whether you're going forward, backwards, or sideways, or any direction. As long as you have you have initiative going backwards too. See, we tie in, if we're going backwards, we lost initiative. That's not true. As long as you got him playing your game rather than playing his game, you have initiative. And I don't care which direction you're going in.
Does that necessarily mean you have to look at terrain as fluidity by an obstacle?
Now, no, you want to, terrain's important.
But what I'm saying is, rather than looking at terrain as an obstacle, you're looking at it, as you said.
You can look at it. Sometimes you also want to use the obstacles in order to, by having obstacles there and reinforcing those obstacles, you can get them to flow in a certain direction too. But don't say because that's an obstacle, we're going to make the whole terrain obstacle, we're going to stand fast. That's what I'm trying to tell you. See, because sometimes you use certain kind of terrain, you say, well, we can set that stuff so that he has to go in a certain direction. We can cut him later on, too. Nothing wrong in it. That's good thing. But not to reuse the whole terrain is reinforcing using obstacles so they can't go up. That's my argument. But you got to get that in mind. Remember, use the terrain as a medium through which you're going to take out his force. Not to defend it per se, but as a medium so you can take out his force. Because once you take out his force, you own the terrain. Whether you're going forward, backwards, sideways, or any direction. Then you own it. Okay, let's go to Guerrilla now. There's only one chart. Lawrence. Now remember, Lawrence was a scholar. I think he's Oxford or Cambridge. He read a lot about this stuff. And he came up with the idea you got to gain support of the population. Very modern context. Note this is according to some sort of brings the mind, the friend, foe, and neutral light. Get inside their minds. You recognize it's mental. And then you note this, he says, be an idea or thing invulnerable, without front or back, drifting about like a gas. In other words, he's not defending terrain. He's using the terrain to present some kind of an amorphous image to his adversary so he can't come to grips with it. In other words, he not only has fluidity, but he's got inconspicuousness. In other words, it's even more delicate than water. He's going to behave like a gas and like water. You can bring in the idea of fluidity of action plus the inconspicuousness, or indistinction. And note this, another quote, should be tip and run, pushes, not stroke. Quickest time at the furthest place. What's he doing here by doing all this stuff? He's trying to present a threat everywhere, but yet seem to be nowhere. In other words, it's like the Mongols. Remember, he read about the Mongols. Remember, he said that's the kind of thing they were doing. And so he said it should be a war of detachment, avoiding contact, presenting a threat everywhere, using his mobility for his environmental background. And that's what he did. He was working the Hejaz Railroad. He was trying, what he did, he was a chain, where Allenby was a chief for going into Palestine. What he was trying to do is by doing all this action around the railroad is to force the Turks to put in more and more troops and supplies there, and then drain away from their effort for defending the rest of Palestine, which made it easier then for Allenby to make his stroke into Palestine. So in this case, the guerrillas were the chain, and the regular force was the chief. If you want to use that Sun Tzu relationship there, in that context. But the thing you see here, as well as in the infiltration tactics, they're using the terrain as a medium in order to get what? Leverage over their adversary. Not to defend the terrain per se, but as a medium to gain leverage on it. That's exactly right. Now, I'm not going to use this later on, but remember what Mao said. Remember he said there's 3 phases to a guerrilla campaign, so I'll preempt myself. I'll tie it right into this, since I won't use this particular statement later on when we get into the modern guerrilla stuff. He said, remember, you have the strategic defensive, strategic equilibrium, strategic offense. But in all three, it's tactical offense, tactical offense, tactical offense. Remember, your strategic defense, it means you're backing up, but he's still talking about tactical offense. What's he really saying? What he's saying, it doesn't make any difference when I'm going forward or backward. The key thing is, do I or do I not have the initiative? And as long as I'm getting the other guy to do the things that I want him to do rather than what he wants to do, then I have the initiative. It makes no difference which direction you're going. So therefore, another way to look at initiative is what? If I get inside my adversary's OODA loops, I got the initiative. If he gets inside my OODA loops, he's got the initiative. And the reason why OODA loops are important because they're all human terms. People have to observe, they have to orient, they have to decide, and they have to act. And if you're getting inside that, you're getting inside that guy's rhythm, his tempo, his natural way of doing business. He can't play. And that's why it's important. I don't care whether you move slow or fast. People say, you know, we're going to drive with this. No, no. As long as you, I don't care if you're slow, you can slow him down even slower. It's all relative. So you can tie initiative directly to that. And of course, the idea is very simple. I actually printed it up for these are my statements, but that's what he was getting. But basically, his statement was where he was quoting him. He said, the idea is to extrude the Turks from Arabia. That's what he was trying to do. That was the exact quote. Lawrence. Extrude the Turks from Arabia. What he's doing, he's basically disintegrating a regime, even the ability to govern. And so here's the impression then. The infiltration tactics all seem to, at least out in the field. Now, you know, we've got to be careful because we're going to get into some other aspects of guerrilla wars that are quite different. But out in the field, the infiltration tactics all Ludendorff are very similar to the guerrilla tactics as seen through Wallace's eyes. Very simple. And why? Very simple. Because they both are playing the same kind of a game. The important thing is, with the advent of modern weapons, rather than the guerrillas gravitating toward the regular forces techniques, the regular forces did what? Gravitated to the guerrilla techniques. Because of the lethality of modern weapons. That's exactly right. At least in the field. You got some other things we got to touch on here. So we begin to see those kinds of things begin to emerge. And see, as I mentioned before, even in World War I, they didn't like to do this. They still hadn't come to grips with night attacks. Nobody likes to make night attacks. Why don't people like to make night attacks? And Clausewitz said, oh, night attacks, you read Clausewitz, oh, that's a disaster. He's full of baloney, because he looked at it in absolute sense. And the reason why, it's very confusing. Well, guess what? It's confusing for the other side, too. And as I said last night, Terry Allen, I don't know what I said, Terry Allen, an infantry general in the Army in World War II, he trained his people at night and they slept during the daytime. The Pentagon was furious at him. He had a duty officer in the daytime. He said, if you want to call me at night. And he was the most successful division commander, infantry division commander over in Europe. First time in North Africa. But he always went off at night. And they said, well, Christ, it's confusing. He said, yeah, but the other guy's more confused because we've been training and they haven't. And that's the issue. You're going to be confused. Can you get him more confused? That's the name. As long as he's more confused, you've got the leverage. You've got the initiative. You're pulling his pants down, he's not pulling yours down. Damn right it's confusing. But if you've been acclimating yourself doing it over, and you see your guy producing Christ, it's kind of naturally this confusing. The other guy hadn't been doing it. You're gaining leverage. Okay? I might add he was fired. Allen. And the reason why, he got his job back later on, he was fired after North Africa because his troops got out of hand. He gave him a lot of liberties, and Eisenhower got mad at him and canned him and sent him back to the States. And then they gave him the worst misfits in the Army to put together another division, and he did. And then after, it wasn't right away after Normandy, but he went back to Europe, and again he was the best division commander with a brand new outfit. Same thing, attacking at night. You know, he thought that other way was rather unattractive. Why do I have to lose my whole division or half my division for making a goddamn daylight attack? This is bullshit. We're going to do it different. The name of the game, we like to get out of it, not only take our objective, we'd like to have a lot of guys standing in. Well, that's not a bad idea. I think it's rather attractive. I think his troops felt it was rather attractive, too. They loved it. Naturally. Okay. The major advance between World War I and World War II is come up. First, we see these things begin to appear. Soviet revolutionary strategy. And note that, what we're saying here, the importance of the crisis and vandalism. and the idea that it really plays upon the moral psychological factors. You're going to see a big play on it, not just physical operations in the field being the primary. And then the lightning war, the Blitzkrieg, which came out of World War I, actually pulling all these things together, the tank, motorized artillery, etc. An initial idea by JFC Fuller, the British Army, Academy's plan 1919, which of course it didn't take place because of the war ended. And then Guerrilla. Remember, Guerrilla, you know how many people knew that Guerrilla was not an infantry officer during World War I? What was he? Anybody? Signals officer, communications officer. That's exactly right. He was a signals officer in World War I. Initially, he was an infantry officer before that. In fact, he got canned because he got in some trouble and was forced to go into signals. Their signal corps, the equivalent to our signal corps. So he was a signals officer, as they call it today, I guess we call him communications officer, but he was a signals officer. And so he was familiar, had privy to the German infiltration techniques. He read the British pamphlets, plus he understood the importance of communications. He put all that together, and therefore he became the innovator of the Blitzkrieg. How important that was. And of course his was to generate what appears to be multiple narrow thrusts. Note that. Multiple narrow thrusts. We'll talk about that later on. Using armor, motorized infantry, called infantry, and supported by tactical aircraft. And then the guerrilla war. Mao Zedong. Know what he did? He took Sun Tzu's ideas, he actually had some Napoleonic ideas, etc., and embedded them under the so-called Soviet revolutionary strategy and came up with a new way for waging war, guerrilla war. As a matter of fact, it's total war. Why do I say it's total war? His version of guerrilla war, anyway. It's more total than Blitzkrieg. Why is that? I make that statement, or you people want to dispute me on that. It's more of a total war than Blitzkrieg, you say. Boy, you goddamn lost your mind.
Because it encompasses political,
Say it.
economic, social, all aspects.
Because he involves the whole fabric of societies, like you said. Whereas when you talk about Blitzkrieg, it's only going against the armies and the government. The people sort of remain a little background. But his thing, he's involved in the whole nine, the political, the economic, the social, he involves the whole fabric of society, that's why. So in that sense, I don't care whether he's using primitive instruments or not. The point is he's got them all involved, as a result it has a greater totality. Whether the instruments are primitive or not is a different issue. And that's the point. And that's something we have to come to grips with. These guerrilla wars, they have in many ways, a greater totality than so-called regular warfare. We have to come to grips with that. So with that in mind, now we'll look through and we'll work our way through all three of them. First, the Soviet revolutionary strategy. I'll let you read it and I'll comment on it. Is this my water?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Note their emphasis on crisis. Note what they're trying to do. And as you work your way through this, you see it has a very high moral psychological content. They're playing in that all the time. How does this first chart impress you? You see it has a very high moral psychological. You see what they're doing? I'll go into it deeper in the next chart. We'll read the second one, and I want to comment on both of them. Back and see it. That's just the second chart. Look at these words by Lenin. What's he bringing out here? The mistrust between what? The citizens and the government. To generate these many non-cooperative centers of gravity. He's doing it in a moral psychological content. Now, many Americans, that stuff doesn't grab them. Why doesn't it grab America? You know, you read 2 charts. Why didn't you say it?
Because we already mistrust our politicians.
Huh?
Because we already mistrust our politicians. We're used to it.
No. The reason why is we're pretty well off relative to other people. Let's say I put you down, right? Put you down where you can't get food, you're being crapped on by everybody, you're in a terrible goddamn position. You get this kind of stuff, you're going to be interested in it. You're going to be prepared to accept this kind of stuff. In other words, you're going to be mentally prepared. Remember what I said? Without a crisis, they don't have an operation. They got to have that crisis. Remember what I said last night? Without anomalies, no mismatch. Without mismatches, no crisis. Without a crisis, no change. Remember I said that crisis is important to us. Because then they can insert, work the propaganda, tear apart, generate these many non-cooperative centers of gravity. People, oh, those dirty bastards. They're all mad at it right now. 75% took a poll. 75% of American people, get rid of that son of a bitch.
That's what I was going to say. You know, there are some instances.
Oh, yeah. They say, get rid of that son of a bitch. In the meantime, no, but that's not in his district. In his district, oh, he's great because they're getting all the benefits. I mean, at all the other taxpayers' expense. Oh, he's great. Don't worry about that stuff. We're doing wonderful. He even went on TV and said it. Look what he's doing for our district, bringing all that federal money. It doesn't make any difference whether he's dishonest, corrupt, or whatever it is.
You know, your Vietnam example is another one. I mean, people found out they were being lied to.
That's right. And not only that, remember, people were being sent over there and getting killed and not coming back. And this made them mad. In the meantime, they're being lied to. They're succeeding and they aren't. It's just going on and on. And so we didn't lose a battle over there. We lost a battle over in this country, on the home front. Which Harry Summers has a hard time coming to grips with. Go ahead.
This hinges on being able to predict the crisis. Because
Or, if not predicted, as it unfolds, you may not predict it right away, but you can see the circumstances are leading to it, and then organize yourself so you can deal with it. That's
you're not
exactly right.
predicting the crisis. The crisis
No, they might be. They might be able to. They might, but they can amplify the crisis. If it's there, they can amplify it. You know, if there's no crisis, everything's working good. Who wants to goddamn? You know, everybody's because the name of the game is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If there are people who perceive themselves as have-nots,
Yeah, if
there
they're
will be a crisis.
If they perceive themselves as have not, and there's a sufficient number of them, that's exactly right. There has to be a sufficient number. The people on the top side, like Marie Antoinette, screw them, let them eat cake. You know, they were living great, let them eat cake. No crisis for Marie and her crowd. That's exactly right. But if there's a sufficient number of them, there's some leadership in there, it'll really come about whether the other people want to perceive it or not. And that's why in some ways people say, what's this mean? What's 45? This is bullshit. But if you're in a thing they're getting hosed, hey, this is great stuff, let's take those assholes out. We're going to get a piece of the action.
It's a real strength.
We're talking about human nature, huh?
It's a real strength of the terrorism movement today, isn't it?
See, that's why as a leader, that's why I keep going backwards. We'll get into it later on. You have to set the example. If you say things, you may make some mistakes, but at least try to correct them. As long as you observe you're correcting, you're going to retain your following. But if you start playing games, saying one thing and doing another, and your people observing you, when a squeeze comes on, they're not going to be there when you need it. I can't overemphasize it. You like it when somebody tells you one thing and does another, and after maybe 1 or 2 times doesn't bother you, but when you find out, say, hey, this guy's really doing a number, I'm getting goddamn tired of it. Now, the nature of Blitzkrieg growth strategy, the idea of infiltration, isolation, or penetration, isolation. You can see me bring that terms up again and again. Penetration and isolation, or infiltration and isolation. And you do it at all levels, moral, mental, and physical. If you can't penetrate the guy and isolate him, why should he throw the towel in? He's not doing it. No point to it. Moral, and you go political economics, by the diplomatic, psychological, etc. They try to use that as a basis to strip away potential allies, thereby isolate their intended victims. And to carry out this program, know what they're doing. Straight Sun Tzu here. Note this. Exploit critical differences of opinion. Remember I said that's how you need that propaganda. Internal contradictions, frictions, obsessions, etc. in its society. In order to foment mistrust and sow discord, therefore shape, quote, adversary and allies' perception world. Thereby, this is Hitler saying, this is his words, create an atmosphere of mental confusion, contradiction, feeling, indecisiveness, and panic. Plan length to make it difficult, if not impossible, for allies to come to a totally disgusting. Alienate themselves. And then what you do is you force capitulation combined with external political, economic, and military pressure. Then you put the pressure on and get them to throw the towel in. If they don't, then the foe's weakened, then you launch the military blows into him and he comes unglued. Can't hold in. One of those things, remember South Vietnam. Remember we had them all built up and priced the goddamn after we left. Why, the North NVA went through there like crap went through a goose. It's over. Now you might say, well, hey boy, you know, Blitzkrieg and Guerrilla is quite different. I'm going to show you they are different. But in this sense, they're the same. I'm just showing you in this sense they're the same. Because as we go into the details, you'll find out they're quite different. In fact, there's a Clausewitzian framework you can use in order to depict that difference. We'll use later. Okay, with that in mind now, what we're going to do is look at first Blitzkrieg and then guerrilla warfare. So let's go dive into Blitzkrieg. But note what they're doing here. I want to bring out one other thing. What's happening here? If you're exploiting all those differences of opinions, disconnections, and that, isn't that the same thing as we said before, generating as many non-cooperative centers of gravity? Exactly. And you have non-cooperative centers of gravity, they're isolated segments, in a sense, more mental sense, therefore you can scarf them all up and realize your purpose. Which is the inverse Clausewitzian thing. In other words, he wanted to go after a center of gravity, it's bullshit, generate many non-cooperative centers of gravity. And they can't function as an organic whole.